Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Comix Rant Mini. I'm your host, Arvin Bautista, and it is rainy in San Francisco Bay Area. These last few days, I guess it's been kind of perfect weather for Christmas holiday time reading. Stay indoors and read your comics. I'm continuing this series I've been running on this channel. I keep flip-flopping on whatever it is that I call it. I call it the Christmas Advent Calendar Comic Book Countdown. Yeah, okay. That sounds pretty good. And I go through all my old comic books that have Christmas holiday themes and New Year's themes to them. And today, I'm going to talk about Starman number 27 by James Robinson. Steve Yeowell is the guest artist, and Wade Von Grawbadger is the inker. We have a cover here by Tony Harris, and I'm a massive Tony Harris fan. It's funny going through the series of Christmas time stories. A lot of them seem to land at a certain time period in my life, which was like which was my late college years. So it's like 1996 to 98, 97, 98. And I don't know why. Maybe it's just memorable for me. And I was a giant Starman fan. Here, let me just bust these out before I go in there. So I got like these crazy compendiums of the whole series. They come in these two like insanely thick volumes, collected volumes. And I believe when I started Starman, I just flicked my stand there. When I started Starman, it was actually, I want to say it like started like 94, maybe a little bit, something like that. Here's the other one, which is crazy. It's got a great cover by Andrew Robinson. And Andrew Robinson's still drawing excellent stuff. I think he has a series out right now. It's like a crime comic. You should check out his stuff too. But anyway, I got into Tony Harris's work. Look at this, Batman, Hellboy, Starman. I think I will have to do one of these compendium reviews one of these days. But we're here for the Christmas issue of Starman, and I don't think he does another one. This might be the only one in the series out of all those crazy volumes that I just flipped through. And I think when this came out, I was a little disappointed because, as I said, I'm a Tony Harris fan, and they had a guest artist jump in here. What's interesting is I don't think I really followed Steve Yeowell's work. He and James Robinson had worked early in James Robinson's career, I think. So he kind of shows up again in the later volumes. I'm super excited to read those later issues of Starman again, just to have a broader understanding of these guest artists that came in. Because when guest artists came in and Tony Harris was not there, I was disappointed. But James Robinson is such an excellent writer. I just have to pick up every issue. It's like a great combo. I'll read stuff about him and Tony Harris, James Robinson, Tony Harris collaborating on Starman, how explosive it would get, and how just absolutely crazy their relationship would be, of like ups and downs. But it obviously worked. Maybe it was not sustainable, but it worked. So Harris, I think, left after, I'm not really sure, maybe after like 40 issues, 30 issues, maybe. He would still do covers, but I was already hooked. Starman had totally taken hold of me, and I just had to be there every month. So that's a testimony to James Robinson's writing. I still follow his work. Definitely my favorite work between the two guys is in Starman. All right, so I just flipped through the the comic here, and it is your, I guess you could say it's your typical Christmas story where the hero has to help, well, in this case, Santa. But it's very down to earth. The way Starman is as a character is very down to earth. So it's very grounded. So this Santa is not like some mystical Santa. It's like a homeless veteran that we find out in the story that was working this job and got mugged, basically. So Jack Knight is on his way to this Christmas party, and it's kind of nice as a story. If you're a Starman fan, it's kind of nice to just read this again. It kind of it's a standalone story, but it kind of sets you back into the setting of when it took place, and it does enough. Maybe because it's the setting of this Christmas party where everybody's catching up with each other, and I feel like I'm catching up with these characters again. I'm just a massive fan of this series, so it was kind of nice to see everybody go into the O'Dare's house, which is like these cops, family of police officers. Yes, before Blue Bloods, that was in Opal City that helped Jack Knight, and they all had their own certain relationship with Jack Knight. Jack Knight is Starman. If you have not read the series, he's the son of the original Golden Age Starman, Silver Age Starman, Ted Knight, and it gets passed down to him. And he's an interesting character because he is not really suited, or in his mind, to be a superhero type. So his costume is like this. You know what's interesting? I looked up Steve Yeowell's work, and he did stuff for 2000 AD with this character called Zenith. And anyway, the character looks a lot like Jack Knight. It's almost like a perfect fit. I don't know what the background is, the story of it is, but I kind of like Yeowell's work on Zenith better than his stuff here. His stuff here is still solid, but he has this stylized proportion that he gives these characters in Zenith that I really like, and I think he really could have put it right here in this issue of Starman. I wish he did. Anyway, the story goes on. Jack is helping Santa basically find this locket of his family, and as that goes on, we cut into the party, the Christmas party that Jack Knight's supposed to go to. He's late because he's trying to help this guy. And we get introduced to each of the O'Dares, which is also fantastic, and where they are in their time of life. And in a way of like, we kind of go through it with the wife of the O'Dare dad. You know, what's weird is they call her Faith, so I actually can't remember if he remarried. But anyway, they don't call her mom. Anyway, she catches up just in the same way that we can catch up to the story and to the characters. And it's great. And it's a Christmas party. We get Jack Knight's dad there. We get the Shade. So the Shade is like this classic, I guess it is Silver Age character that fights Starman. He's basically his bad guy. But in the context of this story, the Shade also has he's kind of like this cool guy, bad guy, where he's kind of good and bad. He's mostly good nowadays. He just doesn't go out doing superheroics. And he even visits, and he gives like an original Christmas Carol signed by Dickens book, because he's like immortal, of course. So it's kind of fun to catch up, and I've actually forgotten how cozy Starman felt to me. How nice, because Jack Knight is just such a real character. And there's things that James Robinson knows that he'll kind of name drop on certain things. So I think Jack Knight is late. And this is, I'm coming from the Philippines here. I don't really know. I didn't even watch all these Christmas TV programs that all Americans seem to watch. I had no idea what they were. Anyway, so Jack Knight is late, and then he says something. He'll say like all these things during the course of the comic. This is pre-internet and the palm of my hands kind of days, but Robinson knows a lot of things, and he will say things. He'll have characters like Jack Knight say very specific things because Jack Knight is a collector, and he runs like this secondhand store, thrift shoppy kind of place. Jack Knight will probably chastise me for saying it's like a thrift shop kind of place, like an antique store, I guess you could say. Just stuff that he likes, and he says, he's late for a movie, and he says, Christmas movies are on every year the same, but Alistair Sim, you can't beat him. So now, I had no idea who Alistair Sim is. It's great the internet gives me access to this, but apparently he's the actor that was like in one of these old school American Christmas movies, Scrooged or A Christmas Carol. So there's a lot of things like that in Starman that I found fascinating, because sometimes James Robinson will just use it to kind of get you in the headspace of Jack Knight. You don't have to actually know a lot of the things that Jack Knight is thinking, especially when he's like in the antique store and he starts just listing out like, oh, that's, there's obvious things like, oh, that's Elvis's like sock that he left in like Memphis and whatever and blah, blah, blah. But it colors the world of Starman. And I think that's one of my favorite things about it. Anyway, I'm just gushing about Starman now. But, as the story goes, as this comic goes on, Jack is still helping Santa. And then, I'm not sure if, James Robinson was like trying to get you all hooked a little bit, but he would be tracking down these guys that mug Santa. And one of the descriptions would be like, oh, he's like a monster. And now my brain is like going wild because like, oh, which super villain is it, But, by the end, it just ends up to be some thug that is deformed. And he's got like a crab hand, which is totally fine. It was kind of like a cool little tease that was not really necessary. He didn't really have to bust out Killer Croc on me. And that kind of like keeps it all grounded like this. So he helps this Santa. He gets the stuff for him. Along the way, he's also Jack Knight is actually going through, some of the homeless population in Opal City. And it's kind of cool to see Jack Knight do heroic things that are not your typical things because that's how Starman is. But it's very down to earth. So it's cool because Santa here even says it. He says, Santa basically saves this guy. I'm calling him Santa, but his name's Pete. But Pete saves one of the pawnbrokers that has a heart attack because he used to be a medic in Vietnam. Oh, wait, no. In the Korean War. And he's a little older than Vietnam. Korean War. And then he says, you're the hero. Like, he calls Pete a hero. Jack Knight calls Pete a hero. But Pete says, you're the hero. You gave me your whole evening. And just right there, you think about it, it's like, man, can you actually imagine giving your whole evening doing that? Right? Like doing this stuff, Because Jack Knight is so relatable. He's not Superman. He's not Batman. But he's just helping this guy who got mugged and lost his locket. Right? Like, so there's like certain things that are kind of cool about this character that kind of make me appreciate it, I think. Appreciate Jack Knight more. And Santa is saying it to him. Anyway, so along the course of the way, why I was getting there is Jack Knight is also doing heroic things as like, he would be like, okay, if you tell me where the bad guy is to one of the homeless guys on the street, he's like, if you tell me where the bad guy is, I'll give you this 20. And then like, the homeless guy ends up having like a story and why like he did bad things and so on and stuff like that. And then Jack Knight's like, oh, you know what? Here, I'll give you 150. You feed like everybody else around you, but you better tell me, you better tell me more information or something like that. He kind of like switches up how much he's giving him. And he's just totally pouring his wallet out to these guys. And it's, again, heroic things, right? Heroic things. Even though it doesn't sound like they're giant grand gestures. Just think about it in your own shoes, right? Like, would you be able to do that? Would you be able to devote a whole evening to trying to help this guy find his locket? Anyway, by the end of this story, he's done his job. He's superhero. Jack Knight is a hero. Defined in different ways. He's broke. He has no money. He's like giving it to all these guys. You can't even give it to Pete. And then they just kind of almost part ways. And then there's a nice sequence here where obviously it affects Jack. And we cut to this scene and he invites him over to their house, to the holiday party. Fantastic. It's like a very nice like Christmas special, right? It's all in there. And then there's a connection that James Robinson does because he's in the Korean War, and I guess one of the sons is fought in the Gulf War, and then the dad was in Vietnam. So there's like this nice tie-in to veterans as well. He kind of keys into it. I don't think Robinson really tries to hammer you over the head with it. There's just only 2 moments where it's stated that Pete, or I guess 3, that he's a homeless veteran, basically. Okay, maybe that is hammering it on your head. But anyway, it's good. It was done really nicely. And then, of course, the Christmas dinner is at the end. And Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's, right? And goodwill to everyone. There you go. Wrapped it up in a bow. Perfect. So yeah, this has kind of grown on me as more of a fun Christmas story for me to reread, for sure. Yeah, the more that I'm actually like talking about it, the more I'm like, oh yeah, this was kind of cool. And it was a time that I'm from the Philippines. I came to the States to study, and sometimes I couldn't get home for Christmas. Sometimes I couldn't get home for Christmas. So a lot of these comic books, maybe that's why these are 97, 98 for me, is when I kind of had to make my own Christmas and find my way through. Sometimes I'm not sure if I actually, I would always be with my aunt, and she lived alone and she didn't have any kids. So it'd be me and her and then her friends in the apartment. And that's how our Christmas would be built. And the Christmas comics around that time period also helped me get into that Christmassy feeling. So maybe that's why, this is like comic book therapy for me here. But I think that's why a lot of these Christmas comic books mean a lot to me, and why I would like to share them with you. Anyway, please share your favorite Christmas comic books, holiday comics with me as well. I would love to read more of this stuff. I'm glad you were here for this episode to join me, and maybe you'll be there next time on Comix Rant. This is your host, Arvin Bautista, wishing you a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and happy holidays. See you guys next time.